So when you start FPV, most people will say something like, just hit the simulator, kid, then you're ready to touch grass. But how long should you actually be hitting the simulator for? 5 hours, 50 hours, 500 hours? So today I want to talk about the amount of time you should actually be spending in sim and why I think most people stop simming way too soon or skip this step entirely. What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Sana FPV, bringing you weekly FPV videos on topics like these. Today we're going to be talking about how to sim with purpose so that when you show up to the field to fly your first drone, you'll be pulling off maneuvers like these. We're going to break it down into 4 parts today. Why simming matters more than you think, sim versus real life, what are the actual differences, dedicated practice versus just like cruising around freestyle vibes, and finally, how to know when you're actually ready to hit the field. So why does simming actually matter more than most people think? In my opinion, the number one most important thing in progressing your FPV piloting skills is stick time. And to me, I'm a firm believer of the fact that sim stick time translates almost one-to-one to IRL stick time, so long as you have these few settings dialed in, which we're gonna get into a bit more later. I think the people that dedicate actual meaningful time to simming, not just cruising around the park and like messing around with your friends, but actually grinding the race gates, practicing that freestyle line 100 times in a row, or like chasing cars in really close proximity, those are the ones that are gonna show up to the IRL flight and make it look like they've been flying for a year. So because simulators remove all of the fear and risk associated with flying expensive quads, you're not gonna have to spend money if you crash in a simulator, you can really just focus purely on stick time. Okay, but what about those subtle nuances and differences between sim and IRL flights? So sims are incredibly realistic in my opinion, but there are some things that sims can't teach you. So let me explain how I went about making my sim time even more meaningful with these 3 things. First, I wanna talk about sound. So in simulators, you've got sound all the time. It's sort of as if you as a pilot are sitting in the cockpit of the drone flying around with it. So if you fly away from the spawn in the simulator and go behind a building, you're still hearing the full motor and prop noises. Now, in contrast to real life, this is a major difference. IRL, there's no audio feed that links up to your quad while you're flying. You just have the video. So if you fly some deep bando and you're 3 concrete walls away from your actual physical being, well, you're probably not gonna be able to hear that quad, and that can be a huge mind if you're not used to this. So my solution, turn off your sound while you're simming. I know it might sound crazy, but this is like the number 1 mindfuck that I encountered when hitting the field for the first time. I flew far away and I couldn't hear the quad. It gave me a lot more confidence to be able to hear the motors at the top end, at the bottom end, and I just like the sound for some reason. Next, I wanna talk about sim turtle mode. When you crash in a sim, it is incredibly easy to flip your quad back over any terrain. So for instance, if you crash over grass, it's 1 stick movement to get you back with the horizon level, ready to take off again. Same thing if you crash on the roof of a building, even if at some weird angle or even in snow in the simulator, you just flip over with the easiest turtle mode ever and get going in the air. This is a massive contrast to real life flying, where turtle mode does not always work like this. Yes, depending on your quad and depending on the environment, you may be able to just quickly flip back over after a crash and keep going. But many times you will get stuck. The propellers will be caught up in grass. You'll be on some weird surface where you're just not able to flip that thing. So I think it's really important to keep this in mind when you're simming. Every time you crash in a sim, you need to sort of take a moment and just reflect on what happened, why you crashed, and how in real life, this would not be so easy to flip yourself back over. You need to think about the fact that you probably are going to have to physically walk to the quad's location depending on the crash. So also try to keep your flight proximity maybe a little bit closer to your character portrait in game. The way I would deal with this in sim to sort of negate some of those unrealistic effects, turn on damage in game. So most simulators are going to have sort of a damage function where when you crash, it tries to mimic real life, either prop or motor damage or frame damage, so that you're really getting punished for crashing, as if you would in real life. Okay, and what about like analog video feed? So in sim, your video feed never breaks up. You have clear video no matter where you go. If you fly penetration through 5 concrete walls and your guy is standing, you know, way below line of sight, you're still gonna be able to see crystal clear in sim. Obviously, this is a massive difference to real life. Analog especially and HD0 are going to have massive breakup when flying in certain environments that are not RF friendly. DJI and digital a little bit less so, but they still break up in a different way. Some people even argue a worse way because of the way the video suddenly cuts out. Most sims are going to have a sort of analog video setting where the further you get away from your person, the more penetration you're going through, the worse quality the video feed is gonna be. And that's really important because that's another shocking thing in real life where you can't just go anywhere and have clear, crystal clear video. This will help you get used to the fact that you need to learn to fly through some of that static at times, especially when you lose line of sight. You don't want to have a heart attack, so this will help with that. So what should you actually be practicing in sim? Should you dedicate to one thing? Should you try everything, different size quads? Well, I think here's what most sim pilots get wrong. They treat it like a video game, and obviously it is. It's super fun to just fly sim. But if you want to actually progress and quickly, you gotta train with purpose. And in my opinion, the #1 way to do this is by hitting the race gates. Most sims are going to have dedicated racing courses and sort of mini racing courses within the larger maps. They've got custom ones, they have leaderboards, and these are super important. This is the #1 thing that's gonna make you a better pilot on sim, in my opinion. So when you're starting out and flying a sim racetrack, you want to go through the track as slow as you need to without hitting any of the barriers and without crashing. Once you're able to do the entire course confidently, then you can start picking up your speed, start kicking up the throttle a little bit, and repeat this process until you're jamming through the course with confidence. Don't worry about the time at first or the leaderboards, which a lot of these games have. Just focus on yourself and trying to beat your previous time. As you continue to compete with yourself, you're gonna notice the progression. I also highly recommend testing out some of the chase maps. So a lot of these games have like race cars that are driving around, or motorcycles, or dirt bikes, and you can just hop in the sim and chase these and practice as if you were doing like cinematic or flying along with them in close proximity. I think this is super important. Recently I was with my buddy, we were driving on some remote roads in his Subaru, and I happened to have my tiny whoop and goggles in the car, so I ended up launching from the car and sort of chasing it while we were driving up this road. Super amazing experience, and I don't think I would have had the confidence to do this if I hadn't practiced these chases in sim. Lastly, you can dedicate your time in sim to specific drones. So I've mentioned this before in some of my previous videos, but most sims are going to have some sort of workshop, community workshop on Steam, and you can literally download custom drones that people have made in the community. So chances are like you're gonna be able to fly your IRL quads. Like I know people have made the Flyfish Volador model, multiple models of this, so I like to download when I'm actually flying in real life. I always think that flying larger quads in sim is going to help you progress the most. I have a whole video on this talking about the difference between starting with 5-inch and tiny whoops and why actually starting with a 5-inch may be better for some people, depending on your circumstances. It can all be very nuanced. Okay, but how do you know when you're actually done with sim and ready to hit the field and fly your first FPV drone? Honestly, guys, there's no magic number. Some people will probably get it in 10 hours. Some people might take 200. The key is sort of when you stop thinking about your sticks, when you can predict your throttle without overcorrecting, when your muscle memory just takes over. I think that is when you know it's time. You'll feel it. It's kind of just like a when you know type of thing. And I think that in FPV, simming, and in real life, the progression graph isn't linear. You're gonna have plateaus and sudden breakthroughs, especially with freestyle. Like maybe you're trying a trick, a juicy flick for instance, and you just can't get the timing down. You can get the maneuvers linked up, but it's not actually juicy. And one day you're just going to get it. It's randomly gonna click, and every juicy flick going forward is gonna be way better. These are the moments where the progression sort of spikes as an FPV pilot. So continuing this process, trying over and over again, new tricks, new racetracks in the sim, is ultimately what's going to build the slow, long-term growth. So when you hit that moment where everything just clicks, I think that's when it's okay to go IRL. And obviously shit, if you wanna go IRL earlier, do it, but you're probably going to end up crashing a lot, and ultimately that's just gonna translate into spending more money because this shit is so addicting, you're not gonna just crash and not fly. You're gonna wanna get back in the air as soon as possible. For me, guys, it took me about 20 hours of sim before I bought my first quad. Admittedly, probably 10 hours were like practicing race gates, 10 hours were just messing around with friends cruising freestyle, and I think that I probably could have done a little bit more, or at least more dedicated race gates before I got my first IRL quad. I did feel confident to at least do flips and rolls, but it would have been nice to get a little bit more experience with 5-inch because I think that ultimately translates to being able to control any size quad better. All right, so here are just a few bonus tips to make your sim time even more valuable. Firstly, use the same camera angle as your real quad. I like to fly at about 25 to 35 degrees, depending on what I'm doing. If you're not familiar, a higher camera angle is going to make your quad feel faster. So for instance, 25 degrees means you're going to have to be angled about this much to have the horizon level, and the more you're angled like this, the faster your quad's gonna go. So if you have a 0-degree camera angle, you'll be able to go very slow and smooth. It's gonna be difficult to actually go fast. So I recommend trying different camera angles for different scenarios, but find one that you think works for you. You can always start lower and slowly raise it up in game. I think it's literally just like arrow keys that raise it. Also, make sure you're flying a similar FOV to your IRL experience in uncrashed. I think the default might be pretty low, so you can raise your FOV. You can just search for like what quad you're gonna fly, like 04 Pro is 155 degrees, and you can change the FOV to that in game. Rates. So I recommend just sticking with default Betaflight rates if you're a new pilot starting out and not doing any crazy freestyle. If you want to specifically do like really spangy stuff that's super fast flips and rolls like Mr. Steel stuff, yeah, raise your rates. And I think that raising your rates in simulator is a great way to just test out your rates. But pretty much everyone says just find some rates and stick to them, because ultimately that's what your muscle memory is going to be tied to. And if you keep changing it, it's gonna be really hard to get that muscle memory dialed in. Oh yeah, and lastly, I like to use bigger batteries, at least in uncrashed. So some people think uncrashed feels a little bit floaty. Can't decide if I really agree with this or not, but I do think that adding larger batteries in game like this just translates to a little bit of a more realistic flight experience. So the goal isn't to rush into the air. It's to make that first flight feel earned. When you can pick up the sticks and just flow without like overthinking, that's when you know you're ready. Let me know in the comments how many hours of sim you guys have logged and in which sims, and how you find sim translates to real life. And let me know when you hit that moment where it finally clicked, or if that happened to you. So yeah, I'm Sana FPV, gonna go hit the field right now and chase some dude flying planes. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.